How you started playing basketball?
Wow, that's a good question. Started basketball. I'd say probably around my son's age. My son is about 7 right now. But I wasn't serious about it. I wasn't serious about it at all. I was just out there having a good time. I think when I started, like I officially started, was 12. 12 years old, junior high school. I don't know what got into me. I started watching the Lakers all over again. When I grew up in the early '80s ball. So we're talking Kareem, Norman Nixon, Magic Johnson, Jamal Wilkes at the small forward position, Mitch Kupchak at the power forward position, right? And then later on, it was, those guys will replace three guys. Byron Scott replaced Norman Nixon. I'm a little bit of a historian, so just bear with me. But I'll get to I'll get to the answer. But James Worthy replacing Jamal Wilkes, and then AC Green and Kurt Rambis replacing Mitch Kupchak, right? So I remember it was 1987, and I was especially inspired. And I don't know if you remember this. This may be before your time, but Boston Garden. I think it was 1987, the 1987-88 season. The Lakers were back. They became back-to-back champions later on that year, but they were in Boston. And prior to that point, they were struggling. I think they got off to a great start, but then all of a sudden they lost like 3 or 4 games. A couple of them and they're in the Boston Garden. That thing, I want to say it was supposed to be overtime, but then Magic Johnson gets a pass, an inbound pass. He comes around the corner, off of one leg, 3-point Hail Mary. It banks off the glass into the basket, and the Lakers win in the Boston Garden. It's a 3-point shot to win. And after that, I said, you know what? As far as I'm concerned, I want to be Magic Johnson. I'm Magic Johnson. You know what I mean? So I think that's where the whole inspiration came. And I just remember the very next day, I got this old basketball, and I just started shooting in between class. And that carried on throughout high school, right? I think, junior high school, before school, I was shooting. The mini break in the morning, the morning break in between class, shooting hoops. Lunchtime, shooting hoops. After school, go home, do my homework. Couldn't wait to get out to the court and shoot back then. So, yeah, that's where the inspiration came from. So 12 years old, to answer your question. No, I wasn't a point guard, although I wanted to be a point guard. I could have been, but coach, because I was the biggest kid in my class, like maybe not height-wise, but just width-wise, coach wanted me to play in the middle. He wanted me to play in the middle. I think the closest I came to playing a point guard would probably be the 3 position, because I was still an underclassman at the time. But I interchanged. I would play the 3, I'd play the 4, and I'd play the 5. So I got very comfortable playing those positions early on in life.
How's your college school in the U.S.?
At the St. Mary's College, a lot of people know about St. Mary's now. I attended the St. College of California. Our mascot is the Gale Force Winds, to be exact. We were in the West Coast Conference, WCC Conference. And, they back then, I'm sure you're familiar with the Zags, right? Gonzaga. They were in our conference. getting a little bit older now. Patty Mills went to St. Mary's College. Matt Dellavedova went to St. Mary's College. So there is a list and a growing list of reputable players coming out of St. Mary's College that I'm proud of. College, yes, I was recruited. I started getting letters as far back as I was 14 years old. I remember the first recruitment letter I'd ever gotten in the mail. It was actually sent to my high school coach. And you gotta understand, I was 14 years old, but I was also like, my body looks like how it did when I was playing in the PBA. Okay, so I was 14 years old. You know what I'm saying, Paul? I was 14 years old. I was already like 6'4", 250 pounds, believe it or not. All right. So yeah, I started getting letters at 14 years old, and I remember my high school coach. My first letter was from San Diego State University. And he said, "Hey, I got something to show you." And, me not expecting anything, I was like, "What's this?" He goes, "Congratulations on the first recruitment letter." I go, "Are you serious?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, there will be more to come, but I don't want this to make your head explode, okay?" So from that point on, I just started getting more and more letters. And it became overwhelming, at one point, because it's like, wow, because what I was thinking was, will I be able to live up to the expectations of all college recruiters? So yes, I was recruited. I chose St. Mary's College. I really wanted to go to University of San Diego. That's where I wanted to go. I wanted to go there. And St. Mary's College, it was one of those situations where I felt like I had to make a decision. And based on my parent, my mother was getting really stressed out, and I wanted to ease her pain. Not to mention, I struggled with college entrance exams, so that extended the whole process, to be honest with you. I could have been a much better student, but I was just so obsessed with basketball that school took a back seat. So that sort of slowed my recruitment process down. And so when St. Mary's College came knocking, I was sort of running out of options, and I was recruited by Creighton University. I remember it came down to University of San Diego, Creighton University, and St. Mary's College. I wanted to know what it was like to go to Creighton. And if you don't know, Kobe Paras did play at Creighton, I think, for one season. It is a reputable school. So I was looking at that as well. But you just don't. Hindsight is 20/20, and I think that I would have had much more options had I paid close attention to school. To be honest. But St. Mary's College gave me an education. I got a chance to play against some really great players. Not in our conference, but played against Cal Berkeley, and who was at Cal Berkeley back in the early '90s at that time. So, and I had a lot to learn as well. It was a learning process for me. But yeah, part of the reason why I chose St. Mary's College also was I got along really well with some of the guys that were in my recruiting class. And I said, you know what? We just seem to mesh pretty well. And I think I like these guys, and I think I'd like to play with these guys. So that's really how that whole process went.
Recruit, you played in the PBA.
2 looks. So first of all, I'm going to rewind a little bit. So I did play in the PBL. Remember the PBL, Philadelphia Basketball League? And that was in 1996. And that was about, I graduated from college in 1996. And so I left for the PBL in October of 1996 and played until New Year's, and then until the first week or so of January. Is that right? January 1997. And I sort of took a year off of trying to figure out, what I was going to do with my life. At one point, I was enlisted in the military. A lot of people don't know that. This is the 1997 year, and I was actually in the Navy. And I'd say this is crazy, about a month before boot camp, I started getting, my agent called me up and said, hey, listen, we're getting, I got a contract proposal from RFM Corporation, the late, great Mr. Yonga, one of the best GMs I've ever played for, because he gave me my opportunity, right? But it was Norman Black and Ron Jacobs. Ron Jacobs worked me out the first time representing the San Miguel Corporation, and Coach Norman Black was the second person to work with that. So I was recruited for the PBA draft. So yeah, by those two gentlemen. The late, rest in peace, Ron Jacobs. Oh yeah. So how they know is through my agent Bobby Rios, and he was I would say he was probably the Charlie D of the late '90s or the mid to late '90s, and so before you even start the process, you got to get your papers in order. So how they knew was through meeting simply on the phone and also meeting my family. So Bobby Rios, my agent, got a chance to meet my mother. My mother's a Filipina, by the way. And so my mom comes from 7 brothers and sisters. And my grandparents, my Lolo and Lola, who I've known my whole life, traveled back and forth from the Philippines to the United States, back and forth. And so when it was decided that I was going to play overseas in the Philippines, those were the requirements. And so just to fast forward, how I was able to play, and I don't know if this rule is still in effect or not, but I remember this being one of the major things in order for you to qualify, even if you do have Filipino blood or not. My mother became a United States citizen 3 months after my birth, even though she's already in the United States. So my grandparents, the history of this is my grandparents decided they were going to migrate for a better life back then to the state of Hawaii with my mother and her 7 brothers and sisters, right? And so while they were there, she hadn't been naturalized yet. Of course, she met somebody which would later on be my biological father, and again, she didn't become a naturalized U.S. citizen until 3 months after my birth. So technically, at the time of my birth, which was the rule back then, I qualified, right? So all those technical things were researched and provided by not only by my mother, but also my grandparents, to my agent, and then agent, whoever he needed to talk to, with regards to playing basketball in the Philippines. So that's how I was able to be able to play. Yeah. So yeah, that's the history. That's the backstory of my journey to the Philippines.
How's your rookie season in Pop Cola?
Rookie season was great. I had a successful rookie season. I started looking. I went number 12 in the PBA draft. So was a toss-up between Danny Alfonso, between Danny I and remember Noy Castillo, 3-point shooter. And so I starting position. It was some games I'll start at the 4-5 position. Some games I would start. The guys that were ahead of me at Pop Cola would be Vanel Kalingit and Saldi Real. And both these guys they were just really cool guys. They made my transition very helpful, especially Saldi. Saldi would pull me aside sometimes and just try to help me out. And back then, Rahel Menezes, the aerial voyager, was there. I think he was like 29, 30 years old at the time. I remember going to my first PBA game while I was still playing in PBL. It was between Sunkist and San Miguel. And the first two players I noticed was Rahel Menezes and Nelson Aflatono. So it was a learning process, I had to learn how to play defense because coming from college, I was so used to just staying in the paint. And then all of a sudden, you go against some of the big men, the quote-unquote big men around the PBA. Not only were they able to post you up down low, they can actually attack you from the perimeter. That was one of the first things I noticed when I was matched up against Daniel Alfonso in both of our debut games. And so that was an adjustment, a big adjustment I had to commit myself to being able to defend and be comfortable defending on the wing. And that took years. That took a couple of years before I became confident in myself to be able to handle someone attacking me and taking me off the drill. If you think about guys like Drew Limpwood, Nelson Asfaitono, a young Albert Patrimonio, right? Who else? Vic Pablo. Even in some aspects, Benji Barras. Those are the only ones I can think of off the top of my head right now. But and Noli Loxton too, because I had Noli could put the ball on the floor. He can post you up, but he can also attack you from the wing. He's very comfortable with dribbling the ball, athletic, physical, and every occasion will knock down the 3-point shot. So I had to get really accustomed and get not just accustomed, but get good at being able to handle players on the perimeter.
How's your stint in the TNT?
It was great. Overall, that was my longest run of any team that I played for. I want to say almost 8 years. That's the longest I've ever been with any team, and I played for 5 teams in the PBA. And it was the best. Those were the best teams I'd ever played. It's the best basketball I'd ever played in my entire life, dating back to high school. I just get them at you. I got there. I was traded there for Aussie and a few draft choices and money. Back in 2007. So I was there for the 2007-2008 season. And, you're there because you're there. And the team that they were assembling post Asi Talaba later on that year, that draft, before the 2008-2009 season, we were able to pick up 3 key players because of that trade. Jason Castro, right? Jared Dillinger, and then Rob Reyes, who was an extra big of ours. And then, we won a championship. And then, a year later, went on this incredible run. I think we ended up winning about 5 championships. So, yeah, that was the best experience. Everybody sacrificed for one another. Everybody was on the same page. I remember my rookie year asking Coach Norman, who was actually our defensive coach. Coach Norman was our defensive coach, but he was also our big man's coach, part of that TNT staff under Chuck Reyes for most of the time that we won this championship. Interestingly enough, my rookie year, when Coach Coach Nolan was my coach at Pop Cola, I remember asking him, what's it take to win a championship? And one of the things that he said was, everybody on the team is like this. This. You're one unit. And I was like, wow, I hope sometime in my career I can get to that point. Be on a team that's like that. And I was just blessed enough and lucky enough to be on a team, especially for 7.5 years, to have that type of mentality and that type of relationship. It was an awesome experience. I missed it. And you know what's cool about this? Is that they just recently won the championship, right? Was it Commissioner's Cup? Recently, Commissioner's Cup. They just recently won that. Hats off to them. The tradition, as they say, continues. Back to back. So, they have a chance to win a three-peat. They have a chance to go for the Grand Slam. So, let's see what happens. Oh, man. Can the Death Spy, San Miguel, beat our era? You know what our biggest problem's going to be? You already know what it's June Marvel Harlem. I say this a lot. I've said this in the past. When I remember playing against Jumar, I said it's only a matter of time before this guy starts dominating the league. And he did. How many MVP trophies in a row? 6? 6? 6, right? Come on. If we had a shot, I would take the 2011 team. 2011, why? Because that was when we were at our peak. We weren't battered up. Because I think by the second year when we won our back-to-back, and in the third year, everybody was banged up. We were really, that run took its toll on our bodies. So I would pick the 2011 team to go up against the Death Spy. I don't know who would win. I'm just saying that Jumar caused a lot of problems. I will also say that we were deeper. And I think, we were in incredible shape. All we did was run people off the floor. So you're talking about possibly an 8-man rotation with that particular San Miguel team, and versus our 8 to 9 sometimes rotation. But I don't know because it depends what Death Spy we're talking about. Because for me, the strongest Death Spy was when they had their supporting cast coming off the bench, right? You had Gabby Spears. You remember his performance when Jumar got fouled out? I think he fouled out. I covered that game. He fouled out. It was against Alaska in the finals. Remember that? They were down 0-3. As far as I'm concerned, Gabby Spears should have got most valuable player of the game that game. He saved San Miguel. And then it became 3-1, and then the tide turned, and they ended up winning, I think, in Game 7. So correct me if I'm wrong about that. That was a while back. But it depends on their supporting cast, the guys coming off the bench, with regards to the Death Spy, right? But it would have been, I don't know. That's one big question mark. That's for everybody else